My name is Diane Mercer, and at 69 years old, I've learned something painful about love. Sometimes, no matter how many years you spend sacrificing for people, they will still rewrite you into the villain of their story if money becomes involved. For 26 years, I loved my husband Arthur with everything I had. I cared for him through surgeries, through depression, through bankruptcy scares, through cancer. I stood beside him when even his own children slowly drifted away from his life. But somehow, 3 days after his funeral, his daughter stood inside my kitchen and called me a parasite. Ah, parasite. After 26 years of marriage. Before I tell you how my stepdaughter tried to destroy my reputation after learning what Arthur left me in his will, make sure to subscribe. Because this story taught me something devastating. People often remember sacrifice very differently once inheritance enters the conversation. I met Arthur Mercer when I was 43 years old. At the time, I was working as a hospital receptionist outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Arthur had recently divorced after a long, emotionally brutal marriage. He was exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. The kind of exhaustion you can see in someone's eyes even when they're smiling. He had 2 children from his first marriage, Rebecca and Jason, teenagers at the time. And from the very beginning, they made it clear I was not welcome. Not openly cruel at first. Just cold, careful, guarded. Family dinners felt tense. Birthdays awkward. Holiday gatherings exhausting. Still, I tried. God, I tried. I attended school events. Remembered birthdays. Bought thoughtful Christmas gifts. Helped with college applications. When Rebecca got into Vanderbilt, I cried harder than she did. But no matter how much effort I made, I always remained Dad's new wife. Never family. At first, Arthur defended me constantly, but over time, even he became emotionally tired of the tension. So we developed an unspoken compromise. He loved me privately, and kept peace with his children publicly. That arrangement hurt more than I admitted back then. Years passed. Rebecca became an attorney. Jason entered commercial real estate. Both successful, both ambitious, both increasingly obsessed with appearances, status, and money. Meanwhile, Arthur's business expanded dramatically. He owned several manufacturing companies across the Southeast. By his early 60s, his net worth exceeded $30 million. That's when everything subtly changed. Not overnight. Greed rarely announces itself loudly at first. It appears quietly, like entitlement disguised as expectation. The children began asking for more financial assistance. Luxury condos, investment opportunities, private school tuition for grandchildren, vacation properties. Arthur almost always said yes, not because they needed it, because guilt controlled him. Divorce guilt, absence guilt, parent guilt. And wealthy parents often mistake financial generosity for emotional repair. I watched it happen slowly for years. Still, despite the tensions, we functioned like a family. At least outwardly. Then Arthur got sick. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Aggressive. Merciless. The diagnosis changed everything almost overnight. Chemotherapy destroyed his appetite. Radiation exhausted him. Pain medication altered his moods. Some days he could barely speak. And during that entire nightmare, I never left his side. Not once. I slept in hospital chairs, learned medication schedules, managed feeding tubes, bathed him when he became too weak to stand alone. There are things caregivers witness that permanently change them. Things people outside illness never fully understand. The humiliation sick people feel when losing independence. The fear. The anger. The helplessness. I carried all of it beside Arthur. Meanwhile, his children visited inconsistently, sometimes lovingly, sometimes distracted, sometimes clearly uncomfortable seeing their father vulnerable. And honestly, I understood. Watching strong parents decline is terrifying. But over time, resentment started building quietly inside me. Because while they posted emotional tributes online, I was the one cleaning vomit at 3 a.m. I was the one holding Arthur while he cried from pain. I was the one hearing his fears nobody else heard. One night around 2 in the morning, Arthur whispered something that still haunts me. They only come now when lawyers are involved. At first, I defended them. They're grieving too. But deep down, I already knew he was right. The estate conversation started 6 months before Arthur died. He insisted repeatedly on meeting with attorneys privately. One afternoon after everyone left the hospital, he looked at me and said, "I need to make sure you're protected." I told him not to worry about money. And I meant it. By that point, I would have traded every dollar for 5 more healthy years with him. But Arthur was stubborn. Very stubborn. Over several months, he quietly restructured major portions of his estate. Trusts, business interests, property rights, investment accounts. And yes, he left the majority to me. Not everything. His children still inherited substantial wealth, millions actually, but far less than they expected. Arthur explained his reasoning clearly one evening. "You stayed when life became ugly," he whispered. "They stayed when life was comfortable." That sentence broke my heart, because despite everything, he still loved his children deeply. But illness reveals who can tolerate discomfort and who cannot. Arthur died during a thunderstorm in late October. I was holding his hand when his breathing finally stopped. The silence afterward felt unreal, like the entire world paused for one unbearable moment. I don't think people understand what happens emotionally after witnessing someone you love die slowly. You don't simply feel sadness. You feel emptied, like parts of your own identity disappear with them. The funeral was beautiful. Hundreds attended. Business leaders, friends, former employees, family. Everyone praised Arthur's generosity, his work ethic, his legacy. But beneath all the sympathy, I could already feel tension building. Rebecca barely looked at me. Jason seemed distant, cold. Then came the reading of the will, and everything exploded. Rebecca's face physically changed when the attorney explained the estate distribution. Shock first, then anger, then something darker. Humiliation. The meeting ended in complete silence. No one hugged me afterward. No one even said goodbye. 3 days later, Rebecca arrived at my house unannounced. I remember because I was still wearing Arthur's old sweater, still sleeping on only one side of the bed, still crying randomly throughout the day, and suddenly there she stood in my kitchen like a storm waiting to happen. "You manipulated him," she said immediately. No hello, no grief, no humanity, just accusation. I physically froze. "What?" "You isolated my father while he was dying." The cruelty of that sentence stunned me so deeply I couldn't speak for several seconds. Then came the sentence I will never forget. "You were nothing but a parasite living off his money." Parasite. After 26 years, after caregiving, after sacrifice, after loving Arthur through everything, I actually felt dizzy. Rebecca kept going. Years of resentment poured out at once. Apparently I had controlled Arthur emotionally, influenced medical decisions, manipulated estate planning, driven wedges into the family. None of it was true. But grief mixed with entitlement creates dangerous emotional narratives, especially when money becomes involved. Then things got worse. Much worse. Within weeks, Rebecca formally contested portions of the estate. Jason joined her. Suddenly, attorneys became involved. Audits, medical evaluations, competency reviews, deposition requests. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was defending my character while grieving. And honestly, that nearly destroyed me emotionally. People who've never experienced inheritance conflict don't understand how invasive it becomes. Every private moment gets analyzed, every caregiving decision questioned, every conversation reinterpreted. Even Arthur's final weeks became legal ammunition. At one point, Rebecca's attorney asked whether Arthur was emotionally dependent on me near the end. Emotionally dependent. As though caring for your dying husband somehow becomes suspicious once wealth exists. The stress became unbearable. I stopped sleeping properly, stopped eating. Friends withdrew awkwardly. Some clearly believed the accusations. Because society loves the stereotype of manipulative second wives, especially older women connected to wealthy men. Thankfully, Arthur prepared carefully. Very carefully. Video statements, medical competency documentation, private letters, attorney witnesses. And eventually, the truth became impossible to ignore. Arthur had rewritten portions of his estate entirely on his own initiative. Repeatedly. In fact, his attorneys testified that he became angry whenever anyone suggested reducing my protections. One recorded statement changed everything. Arthur looked directly into the camera and said, "My wife stood beside me when sickness stripped away my pride, dignity, and independence. Anyone questioning her integrity after my death does not truly know me at all." That video silenced the room during mediation. Even Rebecca cried. But by then, the damage was already permanent. The legal battle lasted 11 exhausting months. In the end, the court upheld nearly all of Arthur's wishes. Legally, I won. Emotionally, there are no winners in family wars over inheritance. Today, neither Rebecca nor Jason speak to me. Not birthdays. Not holidays. Nothing. 26 years erased by resentment and money. And honestly, some nights that still hurts more than I admit publicly, because despite everything, I loved those children once. Maybe not biologically, but genuinely. Sometimes I still look at old family photographs and wonder exactly when affection turned into suspicion, when grief turned into greed, when family became opponents. But then I remember something Arthur told me during his final month alive. People reveal who they are most clearly when they believe something valuable is being taken from them. He was right. Today I live quietly. I volunteer at a cancer hospice twice a week. I garden. I read. I try to protect my peace carefully. And every evening I sit on the back porch Arthur built 20 years ago and remind myself of something important. Being hated unfairly does not make you guilty. Sometimes it simply means someone needed a villain to justify their disappointment. Have you ever watched money completely change the way people treated you after someone died? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Because sometimes inheritance doesn't just divide money. It divides memories. It divides trust. And sometimes, it divides families forever.